This video is brought to you thanks to the fine folks at Terrainify. So you're preparing for your next game of D&D, and your characters are going to have an epic forest encounter. Do not set it up to look like this. This whole video is going to be how to make sure that it doesn't look like this. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin. This is the Storycraft Society, and this week we are going to be jumping back into the Setting the Scene series. This is one of my most popular series here on the channel, and I think that there's still a lot to learn once you have all of the terrain to know how to set it up in a pleasing and exciting and adventurous looking way. So that's what we're going to be talking about this week. This week we are specifically talking about forest encounters, how to make our forests not look like this. You would much rather it look like this, right? Stick around, we'll get here. Now, a bunch of the information in this video is going to be kind of self-explanatory, and a lot of people are going to be looking at me going,
"Hey Garmin, why was that necessary for you to say?"
And that's all right, because if you already knew that, great. You're ahead of the game. And that means that you will then hopefully find other tips later in the video that you enjoy. But some of it's going to be simple, and some of it is going to be things that I've learned over the years that really just make it that next step up. Whew, that intro was not as great as I wanted it to be. But that doesn't matter because now we're going to get into the good stuff. Let's jump into the video. Okay, so tip number one is to not be fooled by your battle mat. If you can see behind me, I have a ton of trees back there. So I could fill this entire 3-foot by 3-foot battle mat with trees if I wanted to. But let's say you're in a situation where you don't have that many trees. I think the number one mistake that people make is they try to spread their terrain out so that it fills the entire battle mat when you don't necessarily need to do that. The easiest thing that you can do is condense down to a tighter pattern that will allow your trees to look full and the area to look forested, and you don't have to use your whole battle mat. Another tip that I like to use is the area of the battle mat that you're not using, let that fall off the edge of your table so it's out of view, and therefore your players see a tighter, more condensed woods area. Step one seems so self-explanatory, but the reality is it makes a drastic improvement right away. Just automatically, I feel like this little smaller condensed bit of trees looks so much more true forest woodland than it did when it was all spread out. Let's move on to step number two. Now, step number two is going to be kind of a two-parter, but both of them are based off of one tip. And that one tip is randomization is your friend. There's two ways that randomization can occur. The first mistake that people make is they put all their trees of one color or style, right, in a group together. That looks so unnatural because that's not the way that forests are in nature. Different types of trees grow near different types of trees. So that's step one, is reorganize where your different colored trees are. The next one is look where you're placing them. In this example, all of the trees are lined up in these straight, even lines. Break that up a little bit. Put them into clusters. Clusters of trees look way more natural, and in fact, when you go out into the wild, into the forests, into the natures, you will see that trees all tend to grow in clusters. Welcome back to another episode of Single Terrain Piece Encounters, sponsored by Terrainify, where I show you an encounter that you can run with just one singular piece of terrain. All right, so let's dive into this one. So the setup for this encounter is going to be that your players have been helping out a local town because their villages that are outside of that town have been harrowed recently by these astral, ghostly, spectral birds that have been just making an absolute mess, causing havoc, scaring the local populace, and your players are going to have to figure out where that's coming from. So into the local wilderness your players go, and they will track it down to a busted and yet strangely still functional henge portal. Coming out of it are just waves and waves of these ghostly birds, and now your players are going to have to get to it and shut it down. There's two things that you need to remember in order to successfully run this encounter. Every other initiative counter, I'm gonna say that again, every other initiative counter, one of these ghostly birds is going to come out of the portal, making a wave of these things coming towards your players. The second thing that you need to remember is that the players have to get up to the portal and be able to touch it to dispel magic in order to get this portal to stop functioning. If they do that, they succeed, and if they don't, they've got to wade through this massive wave of ghostly spectral birds. If this is an encounter that you would like to run, you can actually buy this exact hinge portal that you can run this encounter with over at Terrainify.com or at the Terrainify Etsy store, and you can get it in different formats, so you can get it like this in excellent 3D printed quality, ready for you to put your special touch on it, or you can buy it completely finished so that it is 100% painted and flocked and all that stuff, ready to go from the box straight to your table, and you'll be running this encounter in no time. So definitely head over and give Terrainify a look, and thank you so much, Terrainify, for sponsoring this video. We'll catch you in the next one. One last thing I almost forgot is that Terrainify gave all Storycraft viewers 25% off on Terrainify.com and on the Terrainify Etsy store. All you have to do is enter the promo code Storycraft25 to get your 25% off. So just one more time, that is all caps, Storycraft25 to get 25% off on Terrainify.com and the Terrainify Etsy store. I'll link all that stuff down in the description below if you want to check it out, but otherwise, let's get back to the video. So here is another step that just immediately has such a drastic transformation on where we were. The little bit of randomization and clusters in both color and location of the trees makes a world of difference. And the last little bit that will go into this tip, and I think this is a placement issue, which is why I'm kind of grouping it in here, is make sure that you leave places for your players and your miniatures to get around. That perfect balance of enough space while still keeping it close enough and compact enough that you have cool visual interest. My third and final tip comes in the form of scatter, scatter, scatter. I got a lot here because the point that I'm making is that you want a lot of scatter terrain. When you walk around in a forest, you're going to see a lot of downed logs. You're going to see a lot of bushes and underbrush. You're going to see all of those things that dominate a lot of the low ground. So just having trees isn't enough to add a true visual capacity to your scene. And don't think that you have to stick to just logs and bushes. You can also have rocks, both outcroppings of rocks that you clump up like this or scattered around. That will also give your players a chance to do creative things with their characters, like leap off of a rock before they come down onto an enemy or whatever that would be. The same rules that we've already talked about apply to the scatter terrain, with one little exception. I like to think of my scatter terrain as advantageous positions that the players can use to their advantage, right? Things like stacked up logs that could be used as cover. Things like, I know that the bad guys are going to be using this particular set of bushes as a place to hide. So where are the characters going to come through are going to help you to set up a scene that is not only good looking and aesthetically pleasing, but also memorable for your players, that the next time they see a group of bushes out on the table, they'll go, ooh, I wonder if there is a bad guy waiting inside. So those are my 3 tips for how to take your forest scene from this to this, which to me is just an absolutely massive improvement. And those don't even scratch the surface of the other things that I think are important. So here are my honorable mention tips. Always add a little bit of civilization to your forests, right? A little bit of ruins never did anybody any harm, or maybe I should say a little bit of ruins in your forest scenes doesn't by itself harm anyone, but usually there's something bad in there that's going to jump out at your players, but that's always good. Adding elevation is always something that is really good. Stacking books up underneath of your mat, doing something like that to make the topography a little bit up and down is always good. But all of these things are just going to add icing onto the cake of these original 3 tips. So just a quick recap, we are going to make sure that we condense our trees down into the appropriate area. And then after we do that, we're going to organize our trees in a random way. We're not going to put them in straight lines. We are also not going to put them so that all of the colors match. The final thing that we're going to do is then break up all of that open space that we have for gaming with cool scatter terrain that will not only help you to tell an awesome story, but it will make your forest floor come alive and look like a forest floor, which is exactly what you want for your forest encounter battle map. That's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, definitely do all of the YouTube stuff. Leave me a comment down below of a tip that you would have for setting up a forest scene that I didn't mention. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And the #1 way that you can help a small YouTube channel out is to share this video with a friend that you think would enjoy it. So definitely do that. A huge thank you goes out to Terrainify for sponsoring this month's worth of videos. I can't say it enough. Go check them out because they helped out the channel a whole bunch this month. Really, really, really appreciate it. And until next week, I'll be seeing you. Looks awesome.